And I'm going to bring up panelists. I think I can finally get rid of this thing. And we're going to talk about the future of selling and where it's going to go. Because these guys live and breathe everything I've been saying, probably. And so what I want to do, are we all here? Okay. Why don't we just take a few minutes while I get my notes, and if you can introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic.
Hey everyone. By the way, great talk, Cheryl. That was awesome. I'm Peter Isaacson. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Demandbase. We are the leaders in account-based marketing, a category that's gotten a ton of traction over the past year or two. So we help companies identify and then target and engage the companies that are going to make the biggest impact on their business over the next couple of years. So we have account-based advertising all the way through to account-based sales development. So a lot of the topics that, Cheryl, you were covering are very near and dear to my heart, so thank you.
Rick Baker, I'm a sales guy. That's what I do.
Everybody knows who you are up here. So Eric Spatzer, Senior Manager of Enablement Tools for Citrix, big customer of Rick and SAVO. I think as a millennial myself, we've been doing some great things around connecting data with sales mindsets, and also serve on the SWAG Product Advisory Board. So quick little plug. If you guys have any feedback or want to tell your story, please come here and I can relay it over to SAVO for you.
Thank you. So we just went through the future of selling and I solved world hunger.
It was awesome. Let's all move to Hawaii.
But let's take a step back, because the reality is it might have sounded easy, but it's not. And so there's still a lot we have to do to take advantage of where we're trying to go. So the question I would say is, the first one is, let's start with a softball. Where are we taking, what's changing the way people sell? What's happening with those buyer cycles? So it really isn't about the content. We have to take a step back, big picture.
So I think I can kick that off. So what we're seeing at the customer level is the connected seller. And at Citrix, there's a good amount of scale out there with 1,300 salespeople across the world. And they're being fed with information, and they're going to manage a couple hundred opportunities, or what I call friendships. So giving them the right information at the right time is really one of the biggest things that we have to manage in order to be efficient, but also be effective at the same time.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing when I go on sales calls with our team across the globe, I think what's happening is our buyer has changed in terms of their competence and capability around the targeted area. Their awareness of what sales enablement is, I think half the process for us is an educational one about how we fit into that category, not so much what is that category. And they're often very far down their buying process before they ever engage any of us. And so where there used to be this day of RFIs, requests for information, they don't do that anymore. They already have the information. Now they go straight oftentimes to a proposal, and that first question of, well, how much is yours versus your competitors and these three other ones, and we're evaluating and we're going to make a decision, and then the delay happens.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I would say, just speaking as a marketer, I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen over the past few years, and it's a really positive one, is that in the old days, marketers felt our job ended at the MQL. So you talked about it a little bit, Cheryl, just about the idea of generating leads, qualifying them at a marketing level, throwing them over the fence, and then crossing your fingers. Hopefully sales could use them. Maybe they couldn't, but it didn't really matter because that's not what you were goaled on. And I think the change that's happening over the past few years is that more and more marketers are recognizing that in order to do their job effectively, you've really got to go through to close, which means you're not necessarily closing yourself, but you've got to pay attention to what sales needs, what SDR teams need to actually close deals. And that means account insights and intelligence and materials to actually close those deals. So I think it's a fundamental shift in thinking for marketers, which I think is a really positive development for us.
But building on that, where do we see it changing about the shift from the marketing funnel to what the sales actually need to close those deals and content. Where do we see that changing over 5, 10, 15 years is too hard. 5 years. Let's keep it to 5 years.
15 years is a long time. Yeah, I think you got to the point where in terms of really getting meaningful insights into the hands of the sales folks at the time that they need it. We were talking backstage, Rick, you were talking about, you live on your phone. So everything's got to actually come to you and be available through your phone, which I think is exactly right for sales folks. But I think for marketers, what is critical is, in the old days, you used to be able to kind of do these, or you'd focus on doing a very manual process towards understanding accounts, understanding the buying committee, and doing these very detailed account plans. Those were great, but totally not scalable. And I think what's changing over the next 5, 10 years is really being able to scale insights and delivering them to the folks that need to have them at the time that they need to have those insights. And I think that's an evolving piece of technology right now that's going to continue to grow over the next few years.
I'm going to interject that the one thing that I would say as a salesperson is the type of material I need near the end of the cycle is different than what I need at the beginning of the sales cycle.
Absolutely.
And so I think that we have to do a better job of understanding from the marketing and sales what's necessary. And then, to be candid, I'm not consuming information anymore. I'm snacking on it. I don't have the time because of the proliferation of content coming my way, either whether it's Twitter or whatever. If you open up my phone, and that's what we were talking about back there, the amount of updates I get on a regular basis isn't just email anymore. It's LinkedIn, the number of connections or articles that people and updates that I need to go see, and because it might be relevant to someone within the buying process that I'm engaging with, and Twitter feeds, and all these things that happen that I have to stay on the front line with. Even if I'm not comfortable with it, even if I don't want to have them, I got 25 apps around social selling on my phone today, and they all have updates. There's no way for me to continue to stay on top of it. So I need somewhere for that to be filtered in the moment of context when it's most relevant, so I can deliver to my customer what they need and actually sound logical about it.
So I think both of you kind of hit it nail on the head for me. Is I'm sitting next to the sales guy here, and closing is for sales. They're people based. This guy's a closer next to me, and it's all relationship based. It's connecting that information with him to have that personal connection at the close. And Peter, you had that right at the close, managing it throughout the funnel, but enabling him, the seller, the person, to close at the end of the funnel.
Yeah,
It's absolutely true. And the information is overwhelming to the salesperson. Think about if it's overwhelming from your customer.
Absolutely.
So the right information at the right time is absolutely critical. So in order to do that, we do need to have the insight and the feedback system. So how can your audience provide a feedback system? Do you guys have a feedback system? Are we able to track what's going on by the customer watching it versus the sales rep doing it versus what's going on with all the different people out there?
So how does it, I'm kind of close to the Citrix engine since I've been around it for a while, but how are you guys doing it today to know? I'm interested from a customer point of view. How do you track utilization and then make changes when you get that data?
So I think there's a lot of feedback mechanisms that we've layered into to help get information into what's working, what's not, what is relevant, what is not. Data, I think, is the first one. Usage data, starting with usage data around what content is winning and where is it winning in the various scenarios. Of course, we have our manual feedback mechanisms to help us kind of get a general direction of where we're going with this. But data is always have to be there to prove that our gut feeling where the general direction of the feedback is coming from.
Yeah, so for Demandbase, we're kind of in an interesting situation. So account-based marketing has gotten a ton of traction over the past couple of years. Lots more competitors, which creates a very different dynamic for our sales team. And the category is evolving so quickly that our ability to react and actually feed the sales team with what they need very quickly has really been put under pressure. And Cheryl, one of the things that you said that really struck me was this idea of tribal knowledge. So the sales team are seeing things out on the front line very quickly, and we've been trying to figure out how we can actually get some of that tribal knowledge spread out through the rest of the sales organization. We've done two pretty tactical things, but they've immediately proven pretty effective. One is just having open office hours. So once a week, our product marketing team just gets on the phone, open line. Anyone can come in and talk about what they're seeing in the field, who they've seen in the field, what kind of messaging they've seen in the field, what's working in the field, what's not working in the field, so that we get kind of real time. Anyone can jump in. Usually it's sales guys that are leading the conversation. Second thing that we do is we opened up a Slack channel specifically dedicated to competitive. And that Slack channel is an ongoing, documented kind of dialogue or discussion about what's going on out in the market. And it's proven extremely valuable for us just to be able to track conversations, catalog it, and really have an ongoing record of what's going on.
That tends to flip, when I think about your word flipping the funnel, whatever, I think it also flips our perspective on, we've often created processes or content from an ivory tower perspective.
Yes.
Where I actually think the best content or processes are either adapted or created at a field level and then brought back in to now reinform and reinvigorate the process of creation.
So I think to relate it back to the content creation, we're starting with a sales certification center. Yeah. And I think connecting that sales rep who is the closest to the customer with our marketers
that makes sense.
Helps to create the perfect marriage of content between those two, scalable and personal.
Yep.
The tribal knowledge, though, is anyone doing anything to get it? Because the Slack channel is great and you can pull the information in, but then we have to get it back out. And so search technologies and dynamic and the ability to have landing pages or in content, to be able to then share those best practices to maybe the sales reps that didn't go to Slack or didn't. I agree, right? But sometimes you got to lead a water horse and make sure that we give them every different aspect and way to consume that data and consume the information. So I'm sure you're then...
That's where your predictive analytics comes in, I think. And this is where machine-based learning,
Yes.
I want to know what other people like me are looking at.
Yes.
And so if you can use your technology to now surface, and I'll go back to my mobile device, if I know that 18 other CSOs out there that I follow on a regular basis are reading this article because it's relevant to them, I'm probably more likely to consume that and to look at it and snack on that piece of information and probably share it than if I just got a random piece of document from some vendor 500 emails later that, so what? I need to know the relevancy and context. And so I think the tribal knowledge is trending factors within my company. If I'm a salesperson that's successful and I share what's helping me, success breeds success. I want to know what's making Eric successful. I want to follow that. I want to know what's happening with Peter. When he puts something out, I'm following him. And quite honestly, the ivory tower never got involved. We created the bridge of connection. This created the community.
So I think to elaborate on that from my perspective, it's almost like crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
Where you're crowdsourcing best practices all over through their actions and spitting it right back out across the larger community.
Without losing governance.
Without
because you need that control to make sure the right information is disseminated. But you want to create the culture of crowdsourcing, like you said.
Well said.
And that goes back to what I was trying to say, is you can have all these SaaS-based applications in the world, but if they're not bringing forward some of these new elements, are there other new elements that you think that we can learn from the consumer world that we're bringing now forward in a business world to make ourselves more effective? Tagging was one, crowdsourcing was another. There has to be others.
Yeah. Well, I think just, so one of the things that from a technology perspective that I think this isn't really sales enablement per se, but B2C was very effective at actual website personalization and making sure that folks coming to a site were getting the right content fed to them that was most relevant to their experience. And B2B has really kind of adopted that. It's a little bit more of a challenge because you really want to actually engage with those folks the first time they come to the site. So you've got to use IP targeting and some more sophisticated identification technologies. But making sure that you are engaging that customer or potential customer the first time they come to your website with the most relevant content that you can deliver, whether it's by industry or size of company, or actually regulatory environment that this company is engaged with, whatever it is, making sure that you can start those conversations off right, I think is critically important to making sure that you start moving them through the funnel.
I think there's customer intelligence, customer enablement, and sales enablement, and the marriage of all that between marketing, sales, and sales enablement, and all the intelligence that comes into it creates a great conversation that's being told from a variety of different directions.
Story.
Which is...
You know, I was thinking about something you said up there, simple.
Yes.
I'll tell you a simple solution.
Simplified, but yes.
Yeah, simplified. But as a salesperson, I need a simple way to get the updates. One of the greatest things, so fantasy football, guilty as charged. Follow it, have updates all the time. 90% of the time, I'm looking to see who I need to trade. But I get an alert. And if you do that for business on my mobile device, an alert that allows me to be aware. Just creating awareness for the salesperson that something within my business context has changed. Even in that snippet, allows me to do something with that. Either consume it later, dismiss it, somehow to consume it in a way that I can do it, even if I'm not moment ready, but I can decide when I'm ready. But instead of me having to go look for the update, push it to me.
But didn't you also dynamically assemble all the different players into your own team?
Absolutely.
You took all the pieces from the different...
But there was also recommendations about who I should take, too.
Absolutely. Sorry. I did ask the question about bringing consumer information in.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. So what are we most excited about, where the future is taking us?
I think for me, the world of big data that lives out there, there's too much data to comprehend. And it's exciting for me to say, if I am first to market to help comprehend that, there's value there to sales. And you build it into an AI, you want to call it AI, you want to call it Internet of Things to help out that AI. There's a lot of tie-ins for that. So I think the future is bright from an enablement perspective, and there's a lot of data to work with, more than we can handle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would just think that big data and just the enormous kind of petabytes of data that we have to grind through some things is actually what's feeding AI. And I think AI is something that's going to have a huge impact on us, to the point where this time next year we are all going to be goddamn sick of hearing about AI, I guarantee it. And AI is not an application in itself, but it's going to power some really, really cool things across the marketing and sales technology stack that are going to make the conversations, the stories that we tell, more relevant, more powerful, and quite honestly, more consistent across the entire conversation. So
here I'm a sales guy around a technology, so I'll tell you what I'm excited about. And I go back to my simple term again. And I'm going to refer back to my analogy yesterday around Porsche. There was this point around a kind of an automation of what was called PDK. And it's a double clutch. And it's the idea of accelerating without loss of momentum. And I think that there is coming this day where technology and the art of the human, where those two get married together and there's a seamless transition as we move through the gears or the stages of the sales process that allow us, and you said trust.
Yes.
The way we can trust the information we're getting from the data lake, this massive amount of information, because now it's in context. And now I can do something with it in a real-time moment. Just as we've seen football evolve to an adaptive moment where plays are called at the line of scrimmage and changed in the heartbeat of a moment, and a new play is called and executed, a salesperson being able to leverage technology as a natural part of the selling process and not question it, but to trust it because it's delivered time and time again, whether it's machine-based learning, adaptive intelligence, or a true artificial intelligence, whatever that paradigm is. That's what I'm excited about, because that's when sales gets optimized and the customer and the seller can focus on the conversation.
Which brings me to the point about it changes the game for the value of the salesperson and what we're going to do about training them to trust, about training them to collaborate, because sales reps don't necessarily collaborate. They are a lot of rogue. And so what are we doing? Sorry, yeah, you know.
I are one.
So what are we doing with the ability to train and show them how we can trust the systems, and what are the new skill sets they're going to need for the future? That's a hard one, I know.
Well, so I'll change that around a little bit. And a group that we haven't talked about much is our SDRs, the sales development reps or business development reps. I sit right next to the SDR folks at Demandbase. We call them the bro row, kind of like this bro row.
It's too funny.
And so these guys are, very smart, very diligent, very young, very inexperienced. The last thing I want those guys doing is like making up their own messaging, figuring out their own subject lines, figuring out what insights to do, figuring out what accounts, figuring out who within those accounts to go after. All of that stuff should not be the responsibility of a 23-year-old SDR who's been in business for 3 months. So I think what's really critical for us is actually enabling those folks to make sure that the conversations that they are having are relevant to the folks that they're talking to, that the content that they're sending is the most meaningful to them, that they're not making it up themselves, but we're actually enabling them and guiding them to the conversations that they should have and making it much more effective for them.
It's I'm going to throw this idea out that we have some great SDRs at SAVO, and they do a phenomenal job. And it's not just the bros, it's the ladies. They do a phenomenal job of communicating, engaging. But one of the things I think companies, especially at the enterprise level, are going to have to do is flip what we believe about what it means to enable someone. Because we're talking about content, we're talking about enablement processes that need to change. But I also think the way people learn, when I handed my kids their first iPad, I did not teach them how to use it.
Correct.
They taught me. They were already downloading YouTube, engaging with games, and when they walk into our place, they may not be ready for the specifics on the conversation, but we should flip the model on how do they consume, how do they learn, and we need to change our ways so that we're more relevant in our style as well, because I think often our structure for education and the corporate system is more archaic than our infrastructure from technology. And both of them need to change. Mm-hmm. And it's important to stay relevant.
And it ties back to your agile. So how do we, because telling them something now and then a week from now is going to, we all know they don't listen. So how are we going to be more agile?
Deliver training on an app. They download it. They consume it in snack-sized portions, 5 minutes at a time. I bet they'll come up to speed quicker than anyone else.
So I think to simplify it from my perspective is I don't think the game, and you referenced to how the game of sales is changing and how we change the industry. I don't think the game of sales has changed. It's all about building customer intimacy with customers. It's the education game that has changed to our buyers. They require more information to trust our technology, and thus we have to educate our salespeople and our sales force a little bit larger in order to marry that conversation with technical knowledge, information, plus that trust with the customer.
And maybe the dial of that depends on the market segment you're going after and also the solution that you're now presenting. If it's a B2C, that's a different kind of model. If it's an SMB versus enterprise, the intimacy level goes up and the service level goes up based on the more globalized selling for an enterprise software solution or services-based.
Very situational. Agreed.
Yeah.
So we're coming to a close. Last question. I did already ask you where we see the future, so bring it to a close. Do we really see the fact that, is it all going to come down? Will we start seeing win rates improve, reduce cost, the intangibles about being extinct? Are we really going to, when rubber hits the road, take action on a lot of these technology changes?
Are we going to take action on a lot of these
Meaning, are we going to
technologies?
really use them? Are we going to change our ways? How long is it going to take?
So I kind of open-ended, I would say absolutely the trend is towards leveraging these technologies. The thing about technology, you look at the Lumascape or Chief Martech, the 4,000 companies that exist on that. Half of those companies in 4 years won't exist. They'll either go out of business or they will get acquired or something else will happen to them. That doesn't mean that technology is not getting adopted. It just means there are winners and losers in technology, and some of that technology is extremely useful and some of the technology is less so. Is that going to drive acquisition costs down to zero? Absolutely not. Is that going to suddenly make close rates go up to 50% for all companies involved? Absolutely not. But if you have a strategy as you are onboarding this technology and you actually are using it intelligently, if you are collaborating with your sales team and you have a plan for it, then you can actually adapt technology and make it extremely useful for you. So I think that the progression of technology to enable, to make our conversations better, to make our sales force more effective, to make our marketing more proactive is going to continue on for the next 100 years.
Two things. There was always going to be a CFO that's going to scrutinize spend, and that's reasonable and right. Because left to our own devices, we will spend too much. We will add when the moment is necessary, and we won't rationalize because we live in that moment as salespeople. You need someone stepping outside and asking the overarching reason why we do what we do. So I think there'll always be a governance of guidance around financial spend and a scrutiny against that, and we need that because it's business. On the flip side, there's change management. What can I consume? I don't need 25 apps. I don't need 25 sources. I probably need a single stream of predictable sources that I can grow to expect. On every Monday I get this, on Tuesdays I get this, I know where I go to get this content, it's delivered to me. And if it's, and this maybe no one will agree with me, but even if it's only 60 to 80% right, no one's going to reach perfection or nirvana. And I don't care how good it is, there's always going to be a rogue salesperson out there that brings in their number by some random way, and they never get fired.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes. As long as they're not disrupting culture, but they're making compensation, both for themselves and the company, we're going to be happy. But I think you got to weigh both the financial responsibilities and the change management capability of an organization to pivot.
And I will take a 60% win rate any day of the week.
Amen.
So
Yeah,
let's
you and me
stick
both.
to that ratio. And I think my simple answer is it's going to be an evolution. So
Good,
we're going to
because
go
that's what I was saying
through,
earlier.
to your point, it's going to go through waves of impressiveness where we're going to be outsmarting the customer. And then they're going to get smarter. And they're going to require more information, more intellect, and we're going to have to get our enablement needs even more complex. And as long as you stay as customers kind of on the forefront of innovation, I think we can win.
Sounds good. I want to thank you all. I think it's a wonderful topic. If you have any questions for myself on the presentation and where you're taking it, feel free to come out and talk to me or any of these wonderful participants on the future of selling.
The bros.
The bros.
Excuse me.
Grace and me. It was just the three amigos and led by our leader.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we give her a round of applause?
Well played.
At least I did balance it out. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.